Here.
Mr. Rader,
Here.
Mrs. Reyes,
Here.
Mrs. Sashanek.
Here.
Thank you, Saul. If you'd stand with me and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as a moment of silence tonight, I'd just like you all to take in that moment or two to be thankful for the teachers and the students, and that the students might be safe and protected as they continue to learn and move forward with their education. Thank you so much. Are there any members of the board that would like to make board statements this evening?
No.
Thank you.
I would.
Is that Amy?
Yes, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I attended the county meeting this past month to represent Littleton, and Miss Contreras earned an award, we're so proud of Miss Contreras. I wanted to congratulate her, but I also wanted to congratulate Ada. She received an award for supporting us as a board and getting all of our communications out to ASBA, and she was recognized. And so I wanted to take a moment or two and recognize Ada and all the hard work she does to make sure that we as a board run effectively and efficiently. Thank you, Ada.
Thank you so much. Dr. Freeman, before you start this evening, I think I'd like to recognize one of our visitors back here. We have Representative Lorenzo Sierra with us here tonight. We're grateful to have you here with us. So with that, would you go ahead and present what you've got this evening?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I think people also know that Representative Sierra was former council member on the same council that you're serving on, and has worked as an advocate for our community for a long time. So thank you, Representative Sierra, for taking time to be here. Let me say good evening to everyone. Buenas tardes a todos. And I'd like to start out by thanking the community for their participation in the election process. Voting is one of the most important responsibilities we have as U.S. citizens, because it is a fundamental contribution to the democratic process. The results of the 2 questions submitted by the governing board were just finalized by the county. 62% of votes were in favor of joining the West Met Career and Technical Education District, and 58% were in support of the bond proposal. We're eager to create more opportunities for our students, and those are great margins for us, especially considering what's been happening in the world, in politics, and that our neighbors to the west were not as successful. We know we're lucky to serve a community that supports our public schools and values helping our students to be better prepared for their futures. The PAC organized a good campaign. We saw a lot of support from teachers and leaders in our community. We want to thank you all for believing in the Littleton School District. Please know we do not take your support for granted, especially in light of the challenging demands of the ongoing pandemic. We believe in accountability, and we believe in all of you. In addition to the election season, autumn means parent, teacher, student conferences. So I'd like to thank each one of the families that made time to listen to our teachers and children talk about their progress and goals at the conferences. This is a great opportunity for parents and teachers to learn more about our students' learning styles and strengths. Not surprisingly, research shows that the more parents are engaged, the better students achieve academically. We were disappointed to see an overall drop of 6% in parent participation this year, even with flexible scheduling. We think COVID may have played a bigger role this year than last in the well-being of families, since everyone was at home last year. And families in our online academy are still learning to navigate their first year of full-time online learning. Our goal is always 100% participation, so if anyone didn't find time to meet with the teacher, please make an appointment now or share ideas of how our schools might help at spring conference time. I hope everyone's aware that school will not be in session Thursday and Friday for a very important reason. For generations, countless Americans have answered the call to serve, defend, and preserve our nation's ideals of liberty and democracy. Our military men and women come from all walks of life. They are our family members, our friends, neighbors, co-workers, and they are an important part of our community. That's why we set aside time each year to honor their service and thank them for their sacrifices. All of our schools are sharing special morning announcements, delivering teaching lessons, and holding a variety of activities focused on contributions of veterans to our nation as part of Veterans Day observance. Some examples include Mr. Urban, a Marine Corps vet who's joined the district's teaching ranks and is sharing his experiences and journey with students at the Littleton STEM Academy to honor and celebrate our armed forces. LESD Online Academy students will reflect on service by participating in Discovery Education's inspiring virtual field trip, Voices of U.S., Why We Serve. And that features stories of U.S. veterans and civic leaders. Quentin STEM Academy is creating a wall of honor. They gathered the names of those who have served our nation. Their name, branch of service, and rank will be posted on a ribbon on the wall. And they'll also be randomly selecting one veteran or family to win a patriotic wreath created by staff. October is also National Bullying Prevention Month. This campaign unites communities nationwide to raise awareness of bullying, and it's not just a problem amongst children. The list of school activities would be too long to cover tonight, but an honorable mention goes to Quinton National Junior Honor Society students who found time to cover their front sidewalk with positive and encouraging messages to prevent bullying. We also had staff and students at several of our schools show their support for the World Day of Unity by wearing orange to show their unity for kindness, acceptance, and inclusion. And the last week of October was Red Ribbon Week. This is an awareness campaign to inform people about the dangers of drug use. This continues to be a problem in parts of our school community, from sharing cannabis that would be legal for adults to more dangerous substances such as fentanyl. Collier, Estrella Vista, Littleton, and Quentin showed their commitment with being drug-free by participating in Spirit Weeks, along with daily messages on the importance of drug-free life. Estrella Vista also held a door display contest, and the Red Ribbon Week theme of Be Happy, Be Brave, Be Drug-Free was part of morning announcements every day for Quentin students. We've also seen a concerning influence on our youth from TikTok in the last couple months. It seems the platform has challenges for adolescents to record themselves engaging in destructive and antisocial activities. We didn't see much impact from the slap a teacher meme, but several parents are having to pay for property damage and replace restroom fixtures and now furniture. I hope parents will stay on top of what their children are viewing on this app and continue to warn them about the real-life consequences for their families, especially when the conduct is criminal. As most of you are aware, we hosted a second free COVID and flu vaccine clinic here at the Underdown Learning Center auditorium last month in collaboration with Albertsons, Safeway, and Vaughn's Pharmacies. There's a constant flow of participants, and so far about 300 people have received either their first or second COVID shots, boosters, or flu shots in this venue. To be clear, we are not providing shots or mandating anything. What we are doing is providing space for service providers to make it convenient for our families, because we know how challenging it is to be running a home and a working parent. The November clinic is a week from tomorrow, and they'll be able to provide everyone 5 years and up with vaccinations. I also want to thank everyone who volunteers to help, because it's made it possible to have an extremely sufficient and successful events. And finally, diabetes significantly impacts our learning community. So in closing, I want to thank all of our staff and the cheer team for raising over $200 already this month for the Arizona Diabetes Foundation, and to express our appreciation to Westside Impact for the 766 innovative projects dollar projects donation for Quinton STEM Academy. And Mr. President, that's all I have this evening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Freeman. We appreciate it. Next item of business are two proclamations we'd like to share with you. I've asked John to read the first one about the American Education Week, and I will read the second one about the Family Engagement Month.
Thank you, Mr. President. American Education Week. Whereas public schools are the backbone of our democracy, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality. And whereas by equipping young Americans with the both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future. And whereas education employees, substitute educators, custodians, teachers, bus drivers, or librarians work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism. And whereas schools are community cornerstones, bringing together the voices of adults and children, educators and volunteers, business leaders and elected officials in a common enterprise. Now, therefore, the Governing Board of Littleton Elementary School District Number 65 hereby proclaims November 15th through 19th, 2021 as the 100th annual observance of American Education Week.
Thank you very much. And I will read the one about family engagement. Whereas the mission of the Littleton Elementary School District is to serve Arizona's education community, ensuring every student has access to an excellent education, and whereas our vision is that families, schools, and communities are engaged in every child's education to enhance school achievement. Whereas the Littleton School District partners with families and schools to improve college and career readiness skills. Whereas Littleton School District and school district's educators collaborate with families to form a strong educational framework for all children from preschool through high school. Whereas research indicates that schools that establish and maintain effective two-way communication with families increase participation in the learning process. Families who engage their children in at-home learning activities and monitor homework help students achieve academic expectations. Schools that include families in the decision-making process develop shared goals and actions to improve schools and students' education. Families who understand development milestones and academic expectations are confident and guide their children towards scholastic and social success. Communities that collaborate to strengthen family engagement initiatives impact positive student outcomes. Now, therefore, the Governing Board of Littleton Elementary School District Number 65 do hereby proclaim November 2021 as Family Engagement Month. We commend families, school staff, and community members who encourage students' achievement and form meaningful partnerships on behalf of our children's future. Thank you. Ms. Vanderwater, time of you for our program showcase.
President Nielsen, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Freeman, I am excited to present to you our program showcase for this evening. Tonight, Mr. Steve Rickert, principal of Tres Rios Service Learning Academy, will showcase Tres Rios' signature school focus, including the mission and vision, community partners, curricular connections, project-based integrated learning activities, and plans to continue to build the focus in the school community for staff, students, and families. Additionally, Tres Rios Service Learning Academy will showcase their Kids at Hope Student of the Month, 8th grader Adriana Cantu, and recognize a dedicated volunteer, Mrs. Norma Huerta. We are pleased to welcome Mr. Steve Rickert.
impact their communities. We will provide students with opportunities to explore their interests and expand their understanding of service through intentional and purposeful instruction and community partnerships. Students will be empowered to solve authentic, real-world problems and become career-ready for fields in public service. And from there, our vision was formed, empowering our students to lead, advocate, and serve. As we all know, words are only words without action to bring them to life. Over the next few minutes, I will share with you how we are providing purposeful instruction around service, the community partnerships we have established, as well as those we are in the process of establishing, and authentic opportunities students have to engage in their passions. We are fortunate to be able to offer our students a service learning class that they attend weekly as part of their related arts instructional rotation. Students have access to age-appropriate lessons around several careers in the service field, including, but not limited to, education, armed forces, law enforcement, fire sciences, and emergency response. Instruction focuses on engaging hands-on opportunities to apply the career concepts they are learning to real-world scenarios. In order to make our mission a reality, our staff realizes that the service learning opportunities for our students cannot be limited to this one class. Our teachers are consistently collaborating to find ways for cross-content integration of the service learning careers. In one particular example, our technology teacher worked alongside our service learning teacher to create a multi-week project for our third graders. The students were asked to select a service career that most interests them, and then they researched the technology utilized within that field and the technical skills required to be successful. The collaboration allowed students to find relevance in their learning occurring in both content areas. A report released jointly by the Institute for Educational Leadership, Coalition for Community Schools, and the National Association of School Psychologists stated, in order to have the most positive impact on the academic and wellness outcomes of students, it is imperative that students and communities work together through a collaborative and comprehensive approach. Community partners can help schools prepare students for college, career, and citizenship by offering additional opportunities, supports, and enrichments for young people. Strong school-community partnerships are essential for a world-class 21st century education. It is clear that developing strong community partnerships has immensely positive impact on student achievement, and as such, it has been one of our primary focuses. We are incredibly grateful to work alongside numerous community organizations, some of which include School Connect, Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, Phoenix Fire Department, Ed Rising, Phoenix Raceway, and Valor Bells. In addition, we have established strong relationships with our educational partners, WestMech and Arizona State University. Through WestMech, our students have access to incredible partners in the field and experiences replicating real-life scenarios. We look forward to the opportunity in the future to take trips to the WestMech campuses when it is safe to do so and fully utilize all the resources they have available to us. Our partnership with Arizona State University afforded us the opportunity to participate in the Arizona Service Learning Alliance. This has opened the doors for us to collaborate with our similarly focused institutions for idea and resource sharing. Through our participation in this alliance, we have had the privilege of presenting at the Arizona Civics Conference, where we were able to share our journey and highlight the amazing work our students are doing. Recently, we had the great honor of presenting to the Community and Family Connection Committee of the Air Education Training Command at Luke Air Force Base, and we are excited for all the amazing opportunities and experiences this partnership provide for our students. Our third commitment within our mission is to provide students with authentic opportunities to solve real-world problems and engage in their passions. As I mentioned earlier, we look forward to the day where we can take our students onto the WestMech campuses to provide incredible hands-on experiences. In the meantime, we have utilized many virtual options to simulate these experiences. We have also made arrangements to have high school students who are currently part of the service programs at WestMech present virtually to our students. Hearing from fellow students, only a few years older, can serve as a motivator to begin intentionally planning for the high school years ahead. Our law enforcement curriculum is about to get even more exciting with our recent purchase of Z-Space Virtual Reality Criminal Justice Program. This competency-based course is designed to provide students with an overview of the criminal justice system. In the criminal justice course, students will engage in virtual reality and interactive videos designed to test their visual memory and ability to apply their skills to effectively manage a crime scene. Students will become immersed in topics that include criminal and constitutional law, security, and communications. Students will review basic law enforcement skills, which cover tactics, methods, and skills utilized by law enforcement. Our students and staff are eagerly awaiting the opportunity to learn and engage on this exciting new platform. Our next step in the process is the development of capstone experiences for each grade level. It is our intention that these experiences will be yearly events to serve as the summation of learning, as well as motivators for students to continue to pursue their passion for service at Tres Rios. I would like to conclude our presentation with a short video featuring Ms. Ingrid Benson, our service learning teacher, and 3 of her students, 1st grader Avery Hernandez, 6th grader Xander Saunders, and 8th grader Diego Rodriguez.
You know it's 60, right?
What I really like about our service learning program is that it combines theory and practice.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
So my favorite thing to learn about in service learning is about how firefighters, I like learning about how they're timing themselves and their suits.
The students learn about various different principles in service learning careers, police, fire, and then the 4 branches of the military. And then they get to practice some of the things that we've learned hands-on.
One branch for you to go to. Something that I learned about the Army that I found really interesting is that when we go to war, the Army is the first one to actually go into the war.
In kindergarten, they get to do a virtual fire station tour and also learn about the different uniforms, the significance of their colors and symbols, and then they also get to create their own uniforms. They get to draw them and wear them. And 1st and 2nd grade, they learn about the science of fire, the difference between a good and bad fire. And in 3rd and 4th grade, they learn CPR and first aid. So they get to learn all of the different steps of CPR in first aid, but they also get to practice. And then we talk about different scenarios and actual true stories of people that were saved and the impact of that. And then in 5th grade, they get to learn about the complexity of our court system.
The career that's interested me the most out of all of them would be law enforcement. I see it as a potential career for me, and as I go through my life, I would expect myself to go to law school and formally do all these so I can become my dream job.
And 6th and 7th and 8th grade are working on technology integration projects where they talk about the different areas of service learning careers and how technology and advancements are affecting those careers.
Thank you again for the opportunity to present tonight and to showcase our service learning program. I would be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Do any of the members have any questions or comments at this time?
No, it was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we do appreciate that and get to learn what those kids are learning, and hopefully by the time they need to use it, they'll remember it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And now at this time, I'm honored to recognize our Kid at Hope student, 8th grader Adriana Cantu, along with our volunteer, Ms. Norma Huerta.
I feel privileged to have been chosen as the Kid at Hope for my school. This for me is recognition for the dedication and hard work I have put towards my future. I have big dreams and plans. I want to attend Oxford and study psychology, maybe travel around, and eventually get into criminal psychology. Since I've come to this school, I felt supported and believed in by my teachers and staff, so a quick thanks to them. Again, I am honored to have been chosen and will continue to do my very best.
Hello, my name is Steve Rickert, Principal at Tres Rios Service Academy. Tonight, I have the great privilege of honoring an individual who has given countless hours of her time to positively impact our campus. Our Tres Rios Volunteer Award goes to Ms. Norma Huerta. For the last 6 years, Ms. Huerta has been a fixture at our book fairs. When the doors were open, Ms. Huerta has consistently been present and ready to serve our students and staff. Ms. Huerta's faithful volunteering has resulted in successful book fairs that have equated to thousands of dollars raised for our library through the years. On behalf of our entire Puma community, I want to offer our sincere appreciation and congratulations on this well-deserved award. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that, and those people who volunteer to serve our kids.
Thank you, Mr. Rickert. President Nielsen, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman, I am excited to present to you our second program showcase for this evening. Tonight, Mia Della Rosa, Athletic Director, will share Littleton's Fall Virtual Athletic Community Health and Wellness Program, along with our virtual fitness clubs. Littleton has continued to provide opportunities for students, staff, and our community to stay active and healthy. Ms. Della Rosa will share the program's health benefits, participation, interaction with the Zion National Park trails through a 12-day challenge and a few fun testimonials. Welcome, Ms. Della Rosa.
Thank you. President Nielsen, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman, and executive team, thank you for having me this evening. My name is Mia Della Rosa, and I have the pleasure of presenting the successes of our athletic program. Our athletic program has evolved and adapted to continue to meet the needs of our community through the pandemic. While our traditional sports program is currently postponed, it has been necessary to continue to provide a platform for our students to maintain a healthy lifestyle by pursuing fitness goals that will have long-lasting effects on mental, social, emotional, and physical well-being of our entire community. Our reach as an athletic program is larger in scope than the competition of a couple of years at the middle school level. We set the foundation for healthy behavior as students transition from adolescence to adulthood. Our student athlete population, ages 10 to 14, are 8 times more likely to enter their young professional careers as active, healthy adults. We can also predict that more than 3/4 of our student athletes will enter their 30s having maintained an active lifestyle, leading to lower levels of depression, 7 to 8% higher annual earnings, and a reduced risk of heart disease, stroke, cancer, and diabetes. The pandemic has taken a toll on the participation rate in organized sports across the nation and in our own community. Participation for students in 1st through 6th grade is down nearly 14%. Participation rates for our 7th and 8th graders and the high schools we feed into are down nearly 5%, with a drastic drop over the past 2 years. Our district is also experiencing drops in participation rate. Prior to the pandemic, our athletic program was robust, serving over 200 students in a single quarter. Last year, our participation rates fluctuated as we played with different virtual structures for offering athletic opportunities. While we ended the year with over 100 participants, this was still only half of our typical participation rate. This year, we offer fitness clubs. These are opportunities for our students to get a feel for our traditional athletic offerings. While our fitness clubs do not experience cross-campus competition, they are able to participate with peers on their home campus. Training sessions focus on functional strength, explosive movement, and agility and speed. Each area is an essential component of the skill set necessary to be successful in organized sport, but also condition our students to expand their fitness habits outside of organized sport. Our Community Health and Wellness Challenge has been successful in encouraging our community to engage in an active lifestyle with their students. Challenge 2 took our participants through an exploration of the trails of Zion National Park in Utah. Teams competed to complete the 12-day 10-hike challenge through the park. Participants explored the natural wonders that our region has to offer. Participants are provided resources for converting personal interests into steps to be logged for their individual team, as every step counts. Our Fine Arts Falcons took on each challenge with a determined mindset. In this challenge alone, the team traveled over 500,000 steps, accomplishing their mission 5 times over. Community engagement and support is critical to the success of our athletic program. Activity rates plummeted during the pandemic, and sedentary lifestyle has negatively compounding effects on our community. Participation in our program helps our students meet the recommended 60 minutes of physical activity a day. Research shows that physically active communities have 10% lower obesity rates, 3% lower rates of heart disease, and a higher graduation rate. We have been lucky to have a strong athletic program in our district, and our program plays a critical role in our community. The cost of private club or rec league organized sports teams has skyrocketed in recent years. The absence of an organized athletic program puts an incredible financial strain on families in our community. The average range for our student athletes is 11 to 14 years. As demonstrated in this chart, most of our target audience will leave organized sports after middle school, and one of those factors would be financial restrictions. Our athletic offerings offer a platform for maintaining regular participation during these critical developmental years and relieve the strain on families in our communities that would have limited options otherwise. Our program offers cost-effective options for our community. With the community support, we are able to cap participation fees for a family at under $100 annually. Private programs for our menu of offerings, highlighted in red here, can range from just under $300 to over $600 per individual child. Our program has benefits outside of the physical scope, including mental, social, and emotional benefits. The loss of sports during COVID-19 hurt the mental health of many children. Roughly 1 in 4 youth sports parents said their child's mental health, physical fitness levels, and emotional control suffered, with over 30% reporting the child's social well-being was negatively impacted. Since restrictions have been lifted on sports, almost 50% of parents said their child's mental health has improved. I am definitely biased in plugging for the return of our traditional athletic program. In the meantime, we are offering a structured platform to support our community's health and well-being. I conclude today's presentation with a testimonial from 2 participants from the Collier Business Academy. Please enjoy.
Fitness Club has been such a really good replacement for athletic sports during this pandemic and stuff, and I believe that it's probably one of the closest things we have to in-person sports right here at Collier. And I've learned a lot of sports recently. For example, I've studied volleyball, I did basketball, and it was all pretty fun. I got to hang out with my friends, and we could all play the same sports. And it was just really, really fun. At the end of the year, we did a little celebration for all our hard work, and we talked about how everything we did over the year, and it was pretty fun. And I think that I'm definitely joining again once it starts up, and I hope all my other friends join again back too.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Pino. I was one of the coaches that directed the fitness club here at Collier, and it was a great opportunity for us to see the students outside of class and to play sports and to practice doing different skills and what else did we do?
We did like conditioning.
Conditioning, and it was fun and getting to know each other outside of the classroom. It was boys and girls together, so that was a different experience because usually I coach just boys or girls, but not together. So that was kind of fun to see their skills and playing against each other. So I hope we get back to doing athletics and sports, regular sports, because I know as a sixth grader, middle schoolers always look to joining sports at their home school, and it prepares them for high school. So I think we're gonna do it again, and he's already enrolled, so I'm excited to see what quarter 2 has for the fitness club.
Thank you for the opportunity to share the successes of our athletic program. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board members may have.
Any of the board members have comments or questions other than how they can get involved with it? If not, thank you. We wish to thank you very much and hope that you get a few more people and students involved with it. That looks great.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Del Rosa.
All right. The next item on our agenda is call to the public. Have we any call to the public this evening? Okay. If that, we'll go over to item number 9, which is the consent agenda. Are there any members of the board that would like to pull any of those particular items that are in the consent agenda this evening? If not, may I have a motion for approval?
I'll move the governing board approve the items submitted for consent.
Thank you.
This is Amy. I'll second.
Thank you, Amy. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? All right. Fine. Item number 10. Ms. Vandewater, back to you, please.
President Nielsen, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman, tonight Ms. Regan Headings, principal from Collier's Business Academy, will present the school's integrated action plan. Ms. Headings will share 2 of their 6 integrated action plan SMART goals, data used from the previous year to set the goals, strategies and action steps to meeting these goals, and measures to determine growth and/or challenges. Collier's overall percent tested was 90% in FY 2021, which was higher than the state average. The average percent meeting proficiency or considered passing in English language arts for 3rd through 8th grades was 24% and ranged from 15% to 29% in grade 5, which was in direct alignment with our state's average. The average percent meeting proficiency or considered passing in math for 3rd through 8th grades was 11% and ranged from 9% to 14% in grade 7, which was 4% higher than the state average. Welcome, Ms. Headings.
Good evening, President Nielsen, governing board members, and Dr. Freeman. Thank you for this opportunity to share Collier Business Academy's Integrated Action Plan. Last spring, our staff completed surveys to help us determine our greatest needs. These surveys, in collaboration with school leaders, created the Integrated Action Plan that will be presented tonight. Our IAP is the foundation for a cycle of continuous improvement. The IAP is made up of SMART goals in both the areas math and ELA. I will focus on these 2 goals tonight. Goal 1, by the end of the 2021-22 school year, a minimum of 70% of 1st through 8th grade students will increase their performance rating in ELA by 1 performance level as measured by the pre to post district ELA assessment. The percentage of students who grew by at least 1 performance rating in 2021 was 41.1%, 130 students. We have developed short-term goals and action steps to achieve this end of the year goal. We began the year with professional development and data analysis to identify the students' strengths and gaps in learning. Each grade level team has created SMART goals and will share their progress quarterly. Grade level teams have their time to meet weekly and collaborate. Each grade level team and content team meet a minimum of once a week to identify essential standards, create common formative assessments, review data, and determine next steps for targeted interventions and enrichment. The district and school are also working with a consultant from Solution Tree to support our teachers with the PLC process. The process improves teacher efficacy and focuses on continuous improvement. Through the PLC process, teachers use data to place students into small groups. Teachers use these small groups to align instruction for all students to implement targeted intervention or enrichment strategies based on each group's need. Student data is collected from common formative assessments, progress monitoring, and quarterly interim assessments. Goal 2, by the end of the 2021-22 school year, a minimum of 50% of 1st through 8th grade students will increase their performance rating in math by 1 performance level as measured by the pre to post district math assessment. The percentage of students who grew by at least 1 performance level in 2021 was 3.8%, 12 students. Our short-term goals and action steps for this goal are set in order for us to successfully track our goals and realign our strategies in order to meet these goals. We will promote teacher collaboration around these goals to review our data on grade level common formative assessments and attract this data to align our instructional practices. Teachers will have PD opportunities that entail unpacking the standards, developing small group instruction to provide math intervention and extensions for all students. PD will have increased opportunities for training on increasing the use of evidence-based practices and effective use of core materials. Teachers will prepare students to present student-led conferences to inform parents about students' progress. Teachers will also provide students with opportunities to create and track goals using evidence in their data folders. Students will reflect regularly on their progress and be able to articulate this progress to parents twice a year. We recognize the challenges that last year presented to our student learning, and the Collier team is focused on increasing student learning on all levels in the areas of math and ELA, with an emphasis around teacher collaboration, teacher and student data analysis and goal setting, integration of student-led conferences, PD opportunities for teachers which deepen their understanding of the essential standards, providing small group instruction in both ELA and math with building an understanding of data driving interventions and enrichment opportunities needed for all students to achieve at high levels. That includes my IAP presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much. We appreciate that presentation. Any members of the board would like to direct any questions? John, would you go ahead, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for that presentation. I guess certainly a lot of good information in this IAP. I'm hoping maybe you could unpack that. It's listed as 5% on our screen here of student growth in the previous school year, and I think you mentioned it was even lower on the math goal. Certainly that's a bit striking. I think you mentioned a growth rate in the 4% or something. Could again maybe you could just touch on why that number is so low, and then how we go from 4% growth to 50% growth, and how you came up with that number.
So we believe that all students will be able to grow. And this percentage is based on students moving over one proficiency level. So out of 316 students that took the assessment, only, and I think you're talking about math.
Yes.
3.8% or 12 students moved over one proficiency level.
Okay, yeah, that strikes me as extraordinarily low. So certainly again, this is not the point of this particular presentation, is to really dig into that number. I just thought it was worth mentioning, and I wonder if it's worth a future discussion on this topic, as far as, maybe something even more drastic needs to be considered within the goals if we don't see that number drastically improve, frankly, because seeing a number up on the screen like not 21%, but 21 students experienced growth is certainly very striking to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
This is Kathy. I would like to just say something, if it's okay.
Please, Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you. And that is, I am definitely going to agree. The number, when I see it on the projection, I really am at a loss for how concerned that is. I think the words were used, striking. For me, that's devastating. So I would also like to mimic, I would like to know perhaps more detail of how we anticipate of turning this around so that children are successful. At this rate, I really don't have anything else to add, other than I would like more information and a dive deeper into strategies and forecast, et cetera. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you,
President
Kathy.
Nielsen and Member Reyes, I will definitely take that into consideration and
Thank
do
you.
that for you.
Amy, Sarah, either one of you? Not, thank you so much. We appreciate that presentation this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Headings.
Dr. Freeman. Oops. Oh. Thank you. That's my bifocal, so I only could see one of them. Please go with the other one, okay?
President Nielsen, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman, before introducing our Director of Federal Programs and Assessment to present the district's integrated action plan, I would like to provide you with an overview of the district integrated action plan and the district improvement process. There should be another PowerPoint that has an attachment. Yes, thank you. The district-level integrated action plan supports the systems area of focus as identified and informed by the LEA's analysis of school comprehensive needs assessment and our school's integrated action plans. This provides the opportunity for the LEA to address and satisfy the majority of the programmatic requirements, including state and federal grants received at the LEA level in one district comprehensive plan. School integrated action plans and the district integrated action plans are written annually. On this slide, you are viewing a linear view of the district's improvement process. District plans were developed to address the needs of the district while taking into consideration each of our school's unique needs. The first step in this process is the creation of a committee made up of district stakeholders. The committee included district and school administrators, certified and classified staff, as well as community members. The second step in the process is the identification of a few key focus areas and a root cause analysis identifying the key factors for setting goals in these areas. After discussion among the leadership team and analysis of data, key indicators under specific principles are selected as areas of focus, and a root cause analysis process is conducted to determine foundational reasons that underlie specific areas of concern. The third step in the process is the comprehensive needs assessment. Through this process, the district committee collaborated to conduct a rigorous self-assessment of 6 principles for school improvement: effective leadership, effective teachers and instruction, effective organization of time, effective curriculum, climate and culture, and family and community engagement. There are several indicators under each of the 6 principles to provide the district leadership team with a comprehensive analysis to help them determine areas of focus for the coming year. The fourth step in the process is the articulation of our needs, goals, strategies, and action steps. Once a root cause has been determined, the committee develops a need statement and articulates the desired outcome in a goal statement. Next, they develop evidence-based strategies and action steps to accomplish their goals. Finally, this plan is communicated, implemented, monitored, evaluated, as well as celebrated throughout the course of the year. When hearing from Mr. DeLesio this evening, he will share 2 of the 6 integrated action plan district SMART goals, data used from previous years to set these goals, strategies and action steps to meeting the goals, and measures we will use as an organization to determine growth or challenges we may face. You will hear in the presentation of the goals the alignment of the 6 principles from the District Integrated Action Plan aligned to our 7 schools plans. When we are in continuous improvement process, the goals and systems of our organization need to be aligned. You will hear that woven throughout Mr. DeLesio's presentation. Welcome, Mr. DeLesio.
Thank you, Ms. Vandewater. Good evening, Governing Board President, Governing Board members, and Dr. Freeman. Thank you for this opportunity to share the district's integrated action plan tonight. The DIAP is made up of 6 principles from effective leadership to family and community engagement. I will highlight 2 of these goals tonight. I don't know if I have the clicker. Or is it if it isn't? Thank you. Goal 1 focuses on student achievement in alignment with each of the school goals. This goal is made up of 3 assessments: FastBridge and Achieve 3000 for English Language Arts, and Dreambox for math. By the end of the 2021-22 school year, 50% of all students will fall within the low risk and benchmark categories in FastBridge. All students will average at least 5 lessons per week in Dreambox, and all students will average a minimum of 2 lessons per week while scoring 75% or higher on their first try using Achieve 3000. Last year, 35% of students fell in low risk and benchmark categories in FastBridge and Acadians. For Dreambox, students averaged 2.9 lessons per week, and for Achieve 3000, students averaged 0.66 activities per week, and 87.4% of students scored 75% or higher on their first attempt. The district has developed short-term goals and action steps to achieve these end-of-year goals. We will continue to provide professional development around how to appropriately interpret student scores and group students to provide additional supports. These trainings are facilitated by district and school coaches, administration, and outside experts. The district and schools are also working with a representative from Solution Tree to improve the professional learning community process. Through the PLC process, teachers use data to place students into small groups to differentiate instruction and to focus on remediation and extension strategies based on each group's need. Student data is collected and monitored using Common Formative Assessments, or CFAs, progress monitoring, quarterly interim assessments, as well as FastBridge, Achieve 3000, and Dreambox. The second goal focuses on student character development. The district and schools will provide additional support to students and families that fall below the 30th percentile on the SABRS behavior assessment through the work of school social workers and other student support services by the end of 2021-22 school year. This is the first year we have used this assessment to measure student social, academic, and emotional behavior. The school master schedules have been modified this year to allow for dedicated time for daily character development instruction. This is also the first year that we have one dedicated social worker for each school. This will allow schools to better identify and support all students. Professional development is also provided for school staff around all things EQ to ensure effective implementation. The data collected from the SABRS assessments will help schools make decisions on the character development content and student individual needs. In addition to the goals highlighted here, the district has set goals for effective leadership, effective teachers and instruction, effective organization of time, conditions and climate and culture. Under Principle 1, we will retain a minimum of 93% of all staff who are offered contracts or wage statements for the 21-22 school year. Last year, our goal was 90%. Principle 2, the percentage of English language learners and special education students scoring proficient will increase to 14% or greater during the 21-22 school year as determined by the state AASA assessment. Last year, 3% of our special education and 1% of our English language learners scored proficient on the state assessment. Principle 3, during the 21-22 school year, 100% of school sites and 80% of departments will engage in the PLC process. And Principle 5, during the 21-22 school year, all things EQ positive messages will be shared daily during school meeting announcements to contribute to the school's climate and culture by encompassing concrete issues such as student physical and emotional safety. That includes the presentation for the DIAP. Do you have any questions?
Any comments or questions from members of the board? I just have one question here. In the first goal that you've presented there, Dreambox achieved 3,000, Fastbridge, I assume they are all computer online. You can pull off the assessment. It's really easy to see which ones have completed 75% or how many have completed 2, 3, or 4 lessons.
Correct.
But the assessment on proficiency, is it also done online or is it done hard copy on the desk or whatever it might be? How are the two scored or monitored or whatever?
I'm sorry, which assessment are you referring to?
The one that, to see the assessment for the proficiency to move from one level to another. Maybe I just missed my line right here. The reading assessment, okay, that's with Fastbridge, right? All of these are done online.
Correct.
Okay, there's none that are done. What I was looking at is just the difference between, I've associated with some of my kids that like to do things online and do it really well there, but when they have a hard copy down here, they don't do as well with it. And I'm just wondering if we're looking at apples and oranges when we compare the goals and the assessments, or is it all one, or part one, or all the others? So that's really what the question's about.
No, great question. Most of the programs are online, but with Fastbridge, students are assessed side by side with the teacher individually. So it is done on the computer, but it's not like self-paced like a Dreambox would be, where kids kind of just are directed to get on there and then work at their own pace. So yes, Fastbridge is a little different than the other ones.
So it's a lot easier to pick out this information than it used to be, and you've got it available. That's really where I was going with that. How quickly can we have that information available to see what progress we've made?
And that's the great thing about these programs, is as soon as the student takes it, it's submitted and we have that live data. So we're able to pull those reports and get that immediate feedback so we can support students as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. DeLacio.
All right, Dr. Freeman, turn some over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We had made a list at the end of the presentation from goal monitoring and have been working on a couple things for the board. Tonight, we have data that was requested on gifted program participation. I think at the next meeting, we'll have step 4 data, and we're looking at how much data we have on time spent on step. So we're going to pull that together for the December meeting, and then in January, we had some of the other achievement data that the board asked for. So that work is ongoing, beginning with tonight, information on gifted programs. So you can see in the details, the definition of gifted is prescribed in statute and rule, and that's because recently some of the funding weight was restored. So for a student to actually qualify with a weighted count for additional funds to support gifted programs, they have to meet these prescribed criteria, which is 97th percentile on a selected test. We use the COGAT, and you can use that on or out of level to determine kids at the 97th percentile. To simplify that for people, 97th percentile means they score as at or above 97% of the student population. So that is about, in a normal distribution, 2 standard deviations above the mean. There's 3 sections, verbal, quantitative, and nonverbal. Students can qualify in any one or all 3 of those sections, and then they have a modified program depending on their qualifications. We reached out to surrounding school districts to find out what census was, and that's presented. For the ones that responded, they're presented in rank order. Most of the districts we have there have some demographic similarities. Liberty is a little mixed and maybe a little higher, and obviously Litchfield Park has a somewhat higher SES than Littleton, but they are a neighboring district. And you can see usually what happens is if you have similar characteristics, you're going to have a similar census of kids who are qualifying for that program. We do test 3 times a year to try capture as many kids as we can, especially given some mobility of students. And one thing that's not on the chart, but board members may remember, is we added a student we called flex students. They would be able and eager, but not necessarily reaching 97th percentile on the test. And to remind you of that discussion, that was considered an equity opportunity issue. A lot of these tests probably do reflect some of the developmental opportunity kids had early on in years, and doesn't necessarily mean a student who hasn't reached that level on this test doesn't have the potential to go on to do great and gifted things. So we have about the same number of kids in flex programs, though they don't necessarily receive 3 contacts. We do both push in and pull out services with our exploring potential teachers. So the staff actually works pretty hard to see that we're servicing as many kids as possible with the resources we have. They get, as you can see, their creative thinking, problem solving, higher order thinking, and enrichment activities that are aligned to their talents. So that is the program participation data. We don't have comparable flex data for other districts because other districts don't necessarily do the same kind of programming work that we do. Be happy to answer any questions about that program count and percent for the population, if I can, or...
Any comments or questions for Dr. Freeman?
I have a few. This is Amy.
Please go ahead, Amy.
So do we do like a blanket testing at a certain grade level and test like all of 2nd grade or 3rd grade to see if there's any students that have not been identified?
No, I don't think we do anything that would be to test all of the kids in one grade at any time. So, anybody can nominate a student for a test, a teacher, a parent, or anybody else, and they do. I think we do most of the testing one-on-one.
We're currently using the online platform through COGAT.
Oh, that's right. There is an online platform. It does present reports. Reports can be used by staff and families to help meet the kids' needs. But I don't know that anybody can just log on and do that at any time.
No, it was a referral basis.
And then my other is I know that we have some English language learners in our community. This test, if I'm an English language learner and I go take this test, with the exception of I understand the verbal section may be hard for an English language learner, but the quantitative and nonverbal, it's accessible to them. Like they're not going to be interfered or by the use of English if maybe that's not my native language.
I don't know, Ms. Soshnik, if you're asking the test is available in languages other than English. They should be able to, in the quantitative section at least, to respond to the spatial inquiry. But I don't know that we can get the COGAT in another language. Do you know if it's available?
I do not know if it's available. I know that in some test formats we do have Spanish-speaking test providers, but we can certainly find out that information.
Well, I wondered if Ms. Sousnick had seen an administration of the test in a language other than English.
No, I haven't seen anything. I was just thinking back to some of our, ELL students, and I know like the quantitative, but I was mainly concerned about like the directions and things like that, especially if it's on an online format. If the directions are all in English and I'm not very comfortable in English, that may make it harder for me, especially in my experience, the gifted testing is timed. So if I'm spending so much time, translating it, that may take up some of my time. That was mainly my only questions. And if you can get back to me, that's great. Or they were just things I thought of as you were presenting.
We'll look into it, and I think that's part and parcel of the reason that we do Flex Kids is because of issues that may create false negatives with the testing modality.
This is Kathy. I have one quick question. If it's an online referral-based program, how does one know as a parent I could do that? Where is there instructional? Where is it in our hand? How would I know that if I'm not aware of it?
Ms. Reyes, this is Ms. Vanderwater. We do have in our parent-student handbook for gifted services the method for referring a student. It's also communicated several times throughout the course of the year from classroom teachers as well as administrators to our families. We do host a couple of gifted parent event nights, and we can continue to put out communication if you have any other ideas to the community for the method. But referrals can come from students, they can come from teachers, they can come from administrators and or parents.
Is it anywhere on our website if you were to log into, like if I were to log into any school, would I see some mention of it?
Yes, Ms. Reyes, it is on our external district website under, I believe, parents and then gifted program education, and it has the referral process there, and we will verify that, but that is located there on our district webpage.
Okay, thank
and
you.
in the handbook on the parent tab.
Yeah, the problem with the handbook, I mean, it has to be given, and I understand it, but probably once school starts, unless there is an issue that someone wants to look up to figure out what the rule is, I don't know that parents go to that handbook to think of that. I like it on the website. I think that's, that's what the world we live in. fast, ready, it's right there. And if it's on the websites, that's perfect. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other comments?
I do. This is Sarah. I just thank you for this information and this data. Just from another standpoint, my daughter went through this process and she was part of the Flex program. And it was, I could see the benefits of it through her experience. And so I just wanted to commend the team and thank you again for this information.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. If there's no other comments, Mr. French, we'll turn some time over to you for grant funds update.
Thank you, President Nielsen, governing board members, Dr. Freeman, and Littleton community. This evening will be the third presentation you have heard from me around the different types of funds utilized by the district. Our first two presentations focused on maintenance and operations and capital. This presentation will focus on federal and state grants. As this slide shows here under budget limitations, these grants are typically awarded to districts as either formula-based on district demographics, such as percent of students eligible for free and reduced lunch and special education population, or would be awarded based on an application written by the district. The revenue is provided by federal and state governments, or federal or state governments, with federal dollars typically being allocated to the district on an annual basis, and state dollars in multi-year awards. Uses of grant funds are generally spent on supplemental educational programming and would not be utilized for adopted curriculum. You will generally see grants broken up into two categories, entitlement and competitive, although there are some exceptions to the rule we'll discuss later. Entitlement grants require the district to complete an application, but the allocation is already determined by a formula. In contrast, competitive grants are not awarded and allocated by formula, but typically have a predetermined amount of funds available and picks districts to award to based off need and quality of the application. This graph is a representation of the grants by size of district revenues on an annual basis. You'll notice that food service is separated from the other grant types because even though the funding is formula-based on the number of reimbursable meals provided to students, the number of meals provided is variable. So we don't typically put that into the other grant category. It would skew all the other numbers. Entitlement grants, which account for 39% of the grant revenue received by district annually, include Titles 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Individuals with Disability Education Act, or IDEA funds. The Title I provides assistance to districts with high numbers or high percentage of children with low-income families to help ensure all children meet challenging state academic standards. Examples of expenditures from Title I include Achieve 3000 and Dreambox, I think items that we've heard earlier in the IAPs. Schools use these products as supplemental material in the areas of ELA and math. Title II is used to increase the students' academic achievement, mainly by improving the quality and effectiveness of teachers, principals, and other school leadership through professional development. Title III is used to help ensure English learners attain English language proficiency and meet state academic standards. You'll notice all the grants mentioned are federally funded, and that's typically what we see with entitlement grants. Competitive grants are typically funded at the state level. Examples of competitive grants the district has received include a comprehensive literacy state development grant awarded to the Littleton Elementary School. That grant is $160,000 per year for 5 years, so that's where we see the length of defined length and time. We've also received 2 school safety grants the district is using to fund 4 of our 7 social workers. Grants in the other category include structured English immersion, targeted support and improvement in early literacy. These grants were not included in the entitlement or competitive category because they have components in each of them that belong in both categories, so we split those out. I also decided to break out ESSER funds into a separate slide since the rules around the use of funds are more flexible than any other grant that we've seen. You may remember this graphic from a prior board meeting. It's showing you the breakdown of ESSER funds by allocation and the grant ending dates. As a point of reference for the board, ESSER 1 has been fully expended and closed by the district. It was mainly used to retain staff members during the COVID shutdown, like bus drivers. Since drivers were not needed on the bus, the district was able to repurpose them to assist the IT department with the device support for staff and students. The district would not have been able to absorb that cost into maintenance and operations, so ESSER 1 was utilized. The district has also been using ESSER 2 funds to ensure one-to-one technology for our students and extended learning opportunities like summer school. We reviewed the ESSER 3 budget with the board in April, but the main items included in this budget include student laptop refreshes, school signature programs. I believe Trace Rios' presentation had Z-Space as an item. That was an item that we can purchase because of ESSER 3 funds. Ionization of the air for safety of students and staff, as well as extended learning opportunities like after-school tutoring and summer school. That is the information I have regarding grants. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Any members of the board have any questions on grants or grant fund?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Good, John.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Are the ESSER funds represented in the pie chart as a part of the percentage, or are those separate?
Mr. President, Member Rader, I separated those out specifically just because they would have skewed the pie graph so drastically. So those are not represented in the prior slide.
And then separate question, as far as the competitive grants that we pursue, how is that determination made?
So, Member Rader, competitive grants are based on the actual application that we write. So there are competitive grants out there ranging for transportation, innovative transportation. A lot of competitive grants were due to state funding of state getting ESSER funds, and they wanted to open that up as in a competitive fashion. So we would have to write an application and essentially justify why we deserve additional funds and what we would do with them. Does that answer your question?
I think I understand that
Okay.
component of writing. Like, I guess I was wondering as like what triggers we're going to write for this grant versus we're going to write for that grant. I mean, is that just like you guys evaluate each grant application to determine which ones you think are a good fit, or maybe I was just looking a little bit as to what that process looks like, so I have a better understanding of which grants we decide to pursue versus which we're like, let's not write for that one this time.
Yeah, Member Rader, I don't have a specific answer for you on that. That it would be done through our curriculum department or our director of federal programs. Dr. Freeman, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, Mr. President, Member Rader, on occasion we're invited to apply. There are others that are announced. In that case, we have somebody read through them to see if we meet the criteria. So there's a lot of grants out there we wouldn't qualify for at all. An example, high school, things that are, for secondary education. So then there are some where we have applied, for a couple of years in a row and not received funds. We think in some cases, there is maybe a specific agenda with a non-government organization that leans one way or the other. We don't continue to write to that because of the time it takes. We don't have anybody, looking in the back of the Capital Times or the Federal Register or anything like that and making that kind of time and effort to look for funds that might fit.
Gotcha. Okay, so just final comment on that, and I do appreciate the explanation. I worked with grants for a while, so I understand that it can be a difficult fit. Is it a capacity? Do we feel like we have sufficient capacity within the district to adequately pursue competitive grant opportunities? I mean, to your explanation that you just provided, obviously there's a considerable amount of time that goes into researching and writing grants. I would hate for us to be missing opportunities just because we don't have staff capacity. So I guess maybe thinking about return on investment regarding maybe an additional investment in that area.
Well, Mr. President, Mr. Rader, the other strategy we use is monitoring our neighbors in other K-8 districts to see what kind of things they're writing for or may be awarding in case there is something that they're catching that we're missing. So friendly competition with adjoining districts probably, and then we do have collaborations through Westside Impact and Guppy Mac where the business people get together and the curriculum people get together and the superintendents get together in separate meetings and share ideas like that. So there is some collaborative work through our professional networks that we do. I don't know really that anybody at the K-8 level that has dedicated staff set aside for that. So.
Okay. No, thank you for the explanation.
Thank you for that. Any other members of the board got any questions?
No.
If not, let's go ahead to move to the next one there, Mr. French. Potential capital projects.
Thank you, President Nielsen, Governing Board, Dr. Freeman, Littleton Community. This evening, I'd like to provide you with an update on current district capital projects. I'm going to be going through this with Dr. Freeman, and at the end of this, try to elicit any discussion from the board regarding the potential projects we have here. We currently have 2 projects we'd like to review with you this evening. The first project is a proposed expansion to the Head Start preschool program on the Littleton campus. This slide shows the proposed construction of 6 additional classrooms and 2 new play areas, which would be paid for by the Head Start program. In September, the board approved the district to begin a procurement process for this project. The process started with issuing a request for qualifications to general contractors. Once the responses were received by the district, a committee was established to determine if the general contractors were responsive and responsible bidders. We have contracted with ADM Group to design the building for us, and we're expecting the construction documents to be completed later this month. Once the construction documents are completed, they will be provided to the city for review and the select bidders to determine the cost of the project. If all of these processes are completed on time and the cost of the project comes in at or below the amount of the Head Start grant, the district will bring an item before the board January 11th for approval of the project. If approved, the construction would begin late January with a targeted completion date before the beginning of school next year. I'm not sure if the board wants to stop here before we go to the next potential project, or if you'd like me to continue and we could ask questions at the end.
Why don't we take this one while it's on our mind? Any questions on this particular program?
No.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next one.
Great. The second project the district would like to update the board on is the new school site at the Alomar development. This graphic is a little bit hard to read due to the size, but the far left column shows the original plan for school construction. Let's see if Jim's working on getting it pulled up for us. So we began looking at building this school and discussing the cost of the school back in 16-17, and we were looking at about a $14 million price tag for the first initial phase. We were looking at a 7-month construction period, and that was all prior to COVID. Now, typically construction, the district wanted to begin construction last month, and the school would have been open for the beginning of next school year. This didn't happen due to a number of reasons, but one of them being a 10-month lead time on steel trusses to build the school. So we ran into construction issues, we ran into labor issues, and that moved us into Plan B. Plan B accounted for the extended lead time for construction materials, but didn't account for the inflationary factor with labor and materials. The district has been expecting and budgeting for a much lower cost per square foot than is coming from our general contractor right now. Because of this, the district is looking for ways to stay on budget, thus us moving into Plan C. Plan C is where we currently are with this update to the board, and Plan D would be if the district determined that it would be in the best interest to change procurement methods. I think the cost of the project is going to be better illustrated on the next slide, so we can go ahead and move to that. So, all right. So this slide is an illustration to the board of where anticipated costs of constructions were, and that's light blue, and what is actually happening now, and that's in yellow. So we can see that the cost per square foot has drastically increased over the last 2 years and is expected to continue into the next 2 years. We're currently getting estimates from our contractor of $360 per square foot to build the Alamard School, when our expectations going into construction was closer to $200 a square foot. Because of this, we've had to do some work with the architect around what the district can afford to build currently. This slide shows the work the architect in the district has done to build a school in the current environment with the funds allocated. This slide shows the current square footage the district currently has funds for at $400 a square foot. The yellow shaded areas are parts of the school that have been reduced to meet the current budget. The original school design was for 87,000 square feet, and this rendering shows 52,600. Since $400 a square foot is being used for this example and the estimate came back closer to 360, we do have some square footage that we can add back into the plan. This slide just shows some additional deferred item the district is looking into to help with the current budget. This includes an exterior basketball court, the west parking lot, and the east community parking lot. I think at this point, Dr. Freeman would like to open up a discussion with the board about possible options going forward.
Thank you. Any members of the board have any items to bring forward at this particular time? Questions or comments?
This is Kathy. I don't have questions. I just have more, perhaps not an understanding as well. So when I look at the graphs you're presenting,
Kathy, can you speak up? We have a little bit of time hearing you here.
Yeah, no problem. Let me get my phone closer to me. When I look at the screens laid out here, what I'm not understanding is, I understand reducing because of square footage costs. I think everyone understands everything is skyrocketing. So when we're looking at the total budget, we are definitely looking at school first, meaning building the school adequate enough to be big enough for the community. And then anything outside of necessary school, classrooms, offices, etc., that's considered secondary. Is that how we're viewing this project going in, knowing that we are at a budget deficit?
Dr. Freeman, make a comment there.
Mr. President, Member Reyes, this is the site plan, and if you're looking at the same page we are, what's remaining on the site plan, the site plan shows the hatched out areas where we would have savings on concrete and asphalt and those kind of things from the site plan. But the building itself, you can see, is reduced in size.
Can you go back to the previous one?
We'll go back to the previous one in just a second.
Okay.
But one of the things you'll note, we count the buildings going from east to west. So the multi-purpose is 100. The lower grade classrooms are 200. The structures in the middle are 300, and the small building to your left or to the west is 400. So you see around each of those buildings open space. The open space is left for future expansion of the facility to make it comparable to the other facilities. So we started out with a design that is kind of a template footprint We have one template which is Evie and Country Place, another which is Tres Rios and Quinton. This one mirrored the fine arts layout because when we realized we were going to need to go to the community for bond, we wanted to be able to split the project into a final phase, much like we did at Fine Arts. So the full footprint we showed you would be what is comparable to the other sites. So if we back up to that, Ms. Reyes, if you see the yellow blocks, that's square footage we tried to reduce to meet the square footage cost at $400 a square foot, but all of that space is typical. There isn't anything in this plan that isn't in Fine Arts or in other school plans. Now, it has, for instance, in comparison to Fine Arts, it doesn't have the large performance stage that was added to Fine Arts. It's a typical, that's a typical junior high multi-purpose room and a typical stage like you would find at Estrella Vista or Country Place or Tres Rios. So that is typical of most of the schools. Fine Arts was a little atypical because of the nature of the signature program. So this simply is working with the architect to kind of find dividing lines where we could phase construction, to finish off a complete. It's not quite 90,000 square feet. It's Fine Arts is around a little under 88,000, and that's what this site would be if fully completed. So the question that we have for the board and the feedback we would like to have is because the latest cost estimate is between $350 and $360 per square foot. This rendering was done at $400 a square foot. There's probably around 5,000 square feet difference that we can still make in budget without changing our anticipated allocation of bond dollars. And so, as we look at that, there's only certain things that fit into that number. Adding back the band room and storage to the multi-purpose room, adding back teacher's lounge and kiln area to the 300 series. Those are small additions that would, be 4,000 square feet. The building 200 and building 400 are pretty significant. You could, we could rearrange our priorities for bond expenditures. So the way we wrote the voter pamphlet, we are committed to the voters to spend, it was $1.5 million on keeping up with student technology for remote learning. You can vary that by 10%. So that would be $1.35 million that we need to commit to be true to our voter pamphlet. We had some money set aside for non-instructional, and I think we need to commit to that being $1.8 million, something along those lines. But some of the things the board discussed that weren't stipulated in the pamphlet because there was a single description of school improvements and school additions was ionization and adding solar for energy efficiency. We could, instead of paying for some of that out of bonds, we had, for instance, ionization, our backup plan, if the voters didn't approve, was to put those ionization packs out of ESSER funds. They're allowed. We could, even though the bond passed, still do ionization out of ESSER. We could do energy savings financing for solar if the board wanted to move forward on that. That would, just like if it was a bond project, the project would have to come back before the board for us to do it. if we decided to approach those projects in a different way, it frees up some of the bond money to put toward completing to a greater extent Alomar all in. You know, we could add back maybe 18,000 square feet more. You could, I don't know if you could, let's see, if you took the band room and building 2, that would be 19,000. That might be too much. You could do finish building 4 and the band room and the multi-purpose room and still have some money left over for site improvements at other schools. Kind of what I'd like to hear from the board tonight is we think we have the funds, and we're going to put together a full funding revenue proposal. But before we submit plans to the city and ask the contractor to price it out again, what our priorities are for restoring some of this space to the plans that we want to do drawings on to submit and get priced out. So we're constrained a little bit by, even if we can, if the board wants, put more bond resources toward finishing this project as opposed to others. We have, other financing mechanisms we can use for some other projects. That's not true for completing the school. We pretty much need bond money to do that. We need to hold in reserve money for fixtures and equipments and fees to the city and books for the library and things like that. So not 100% of our money can go into the GMP to the contractor. We still, even after we build it, need to be able to open it. We're going to sharpen our pencils and look at all of our funds and see what we can do. It seems to me if we go to restore building 200, that would take up a big chunk of our funds, and it would mean deferring adding solar to campuses to another financing program. Right now, the difference between $400 a square foot and $350 leaves us flexibility for 45 to 50. Well, 4,500 to 5,500 square feet. And you can see the way we've blocked this out, not knowing what the latest GMP estimate from the contractor would be. We were working off the $400 a square foot number, and where we could divide out space, possibly phase it back in with an addition when other funds became available down the road. What we talked to the architect about, for instance, is that most of the exterior work we do is in heavy masonry because we're making a long-term investment in a site, but we might use structural steel and exterior stucco on the north side of building 2 to make it easier to add the second half. So we've looked at mechanical engineering features to make the site expandable given those yellow rectangles that you see. If there are priorities of the board, you probably could do everything except building 2, or do building 200, or do building 200 and a couple other things, but only if you wanted to commit some of the bond funds that we had talked about doing other things with to the completion of this school. And Mr. French went through the progression of how we got to this point from essentially the blue projected bars to the yellow COVID economy bars. And so we are in a, plan C, plan D, plan E kind of mode, and asking for input, priorities, wise counsel. Mr. French and I just really aren't comfortable with going out and prioritizing all these things and asking the architect and contractor to do the work, bringing it back to you and having you ask why we picked those spaces. So we want to have you be a part of that now when we commit the rest of the team to doing the rest of the work. We'll be on the right track and not asking it to do and them to do it over and over again. Part of the reason for this is that every month we delay in getting this done, the cost goes up. So the architect's estimating that, you know, another year from now, we were talking $450 a square foot or something at the rate things are going.
I think 408, and then the year after it would be 450.
Yeah. Dr. Freeman, if I could just interject into that, or maybe we can begin the discussion at that point, at least from my perspective. First of all, I'd like to know a little bit more about what all those yellow areas that we would be considering cutting actually are. So I'm assuming in 400 and 200, those are classroom spaces. So we would be talking about opening a school with much less capacity.
One half. It's this design. Thank you for asking that question. I'm sorry about interrupting you, but this design is 18 classrooms instead of 36. So you could do 2 teachers per grade instead of 4 teachers per grade, or you could do 3 teachers per grade K-5. Factors are the same. That's how we got to that number, and you're exactly right. That's how those rooms are allocated.
Thank you. And I mean, I guess I have a little bit of heartburn about opening schools that wouldn't offer maybe the same band space, if I heard you correctly, and or teacher lounges. Like, I mean, there's basic things that I feel that every school should have, so we're providing equitable opportunities for both our students and our teachers. So a teacher's like, oh, I don't have a lounge because I work at that school. I find that to be unfair. I guess my question is that the projected, the area out there is growing very rapidly. So, I mean, if we don't do it now, like, when does the new school reach capacity? And if it's just in a few years and now we're looking at $500 a square foot for construction, but now we're at capacity at a location, I mean, isn't there an inherent risk of continuing to wait? You know, we're still not going to have more bond money in 2 years, but the cost could be a lot higher.
President Nielsen, Member Rader, that's exactly our analysis. The part of the reason for the discussion is when we did all the work for the proposal for bond funds, we told you one thing, and now we're really coming back and saying, given the new conditions from a couple years ago, the smart thing dollar for dollar to do is to finish as much of this campus as we can, but that's not, I mean, in me being truthful and forthright with the board, that's not what I told you when we started this.
No, again, I appreciate that, and I certainly don't want to monopolize the discussion, and it's a huge decision, right, to digest in a short amount of time. I guess from my perspective, I think when we passed the bond, in my mind, that this school was kind of top priority, and I think even during some of our previous discussions, I had mentioned some of the other financing options available potentially for solar. So if you're just asking for my initial gut thought, it is to try to build this school as completely and as comparatively to our other sites as possible given the restrictions that we have. My other thought, and this is just complete long shot, is it'd be nice if the school facilities board could recognize some of the issues that districts are struggling and could potentially come in as potential partners to even if it was just to offset some of the increased construction costs that districts are facing and our voters are bearing the brunt of, right? It's our taxpayers that are making up the difference. And, that's what the school facilities board was ultimately for. And again, that's a bit of a pie in the sky statement. I realize there's very little control you guys have over that, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Kathy, Sarah?
Yeah, I have a comment. when we did the bond was determined predominantly to build the school to the capacity that we thought we would be able to, without knowing, obviously, and still without knowing the total cost of what it is per square foot at whatever point we're considered done. So I would like to see the school built as total as possible.
Okay, thank you. Amy or Sarah, any other comments or thoughts?
This is Amy, and I agree with Kathy and John. I think that we need to build the school as complete as we can and as equitable to our other schools as we can. We made a commitment to our community with the bond saying that we were going to build the school, and I understand we can only control what we can control, but that school, in my mind, has to be as close as we can to what our other schools offer, including lounge and band room and classrooms as much as we can.
Thank you.
This is Sarah. I'm going to sound this is going to sound redundant, but I agree. I think it needs to be built. The taxpayers entrusted us. I'm all about building this to, how it was planned, and then also just being as equitable as we can when looking at the other schools as well.
Thank you. I guess, Dr. Freeman, one of the questions, or a couple of questions I might have, is you said that just half capacity, 18 rooms instead of 36 rooms. Where was I going with that? We at one time talked about a focus curriculum down at that school. We don't know what that particular is. We don't know how it'll dress out or follow out down there. I don't know if that would necessitate a different kind of room number or whatever. That's one thought. And the other one, if it's 18, I mean, what do we do? About 900 students per school right now, 800? And half of that is 450, so we'd handle 450 students at that school. So maybe just the curriculum and the total school population down there.
Mr. President, so the general magic formula for sizing the school has been 9 grade levels, K-8, 4 teachers per grade level to allow for teaming and common prep. So you have 36 homerooms at 27 students per room is 972 students per school. Usually we do 3 resource rooms, so there is a primary, intermediate, and middle school band for pull-out resource, a grade level band, not band, music band. There is a media center, art room, there's a separate music room because they tend to make more noise than is desirable if you're next to a teacher teaching reading in the morning. And then cafeteria, kitchen, we looked at if we might, buy environmental controlled trucks and have a cooking kitchen and bring meals in. It's at the size of district we're at, it's actually a little more expensive. You have to have a pretty high number of units to make a central kitchen more economic. And then because the school is bigger, you can spread out the cost of operating the plant over a high number of kids. You have some cost savings by scale, which allows you to put your nurse and your secretary and your senior and your principal and your AP in the same site. So for instance, here you would have, half as many people in the front office. You would still be staffing a nurse, which would be more expensive on a per pupil basis. The cafeteria staff would be lighter because they'd have less food prep. There are things like that, but part of the reason that the district chose the size of school they did is because our operational funding comes on a per pupil basis, and if you have more students at the site, it spreads out the cost per pupil of custodial and all of the other things that we like to be able to provide. So you would in some case be seeing half the services, and there are more rooms than 36 rooms because of the additional services and specials and things like that that are typically provided by the district. So half of 972 is going to be 481 or something, 46, something along those lines. So you're the engineer, you tell me.
I just scribbled some
Okay,
numbers down.
all right. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right.
That answers that question. It's just, then I guess what do we, if we plan that way to do the 450, yeah, the costs go up a little, go up. But I guess we just need to start moving on it before prices continue up and we get even a smaller school than what we have planned for at the present.
Well, having an idea now what the general direction of the board is going to be, we're not voting on this tonight, but what Mr. French and I will do is look at the allocation of bond monies with the reserves that are approved by voters and being true to that. We have some reimbursement for the land donation from the school facility board. We have some reimbursement from Brookfield for some of the donation expenses. We have some revenue from our rooftop agreements. So what we'll do is put together a revised revenue and expenditure plan for the whole project, construction, fees, architecture, furniture, equipment, and everything with all of the funds we think are available and the square footage that fits into that, and bring that back to the board.
At that $400 or? Can you...
Well, we're right now at like at 355, and so, I mean, I think within a month we can be pretty close. What happens is each time you delay, the prices that are given by subcontractors to the general contractor have a time limit on them. So if we're able to move forward and do contracts within that time period, we can lock in the price. If we miss the time period, they can essentially reprice it according to availability, cost of material, and labor. And so we want to move quickly, but we don't want to move in the wrong direction and then have to stop and start over in another direction. So we really appreciate the board being, I think, pretty clear in their priorities, though. You haven't weighed in, Mr. Nielsen. I don't know that you're going to disagree with the other members, and it's what makes sense to us. We just didn't want to go a different direction than we told you before without talking to you first.
Nope, appreciate that. So I think you got some direction, and let's go forward with it and come back in a month.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is Dr. Kelly, substitute teacher, and there will be some action on this one tonight, right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. So there's some information on this item, and then there's one piece that we'd like to ask you to take action on. So I'm going to start with the information, and then we'll go to the class size overage so that we can move through the motion and go forward. So tonight we're providing the board additional information about a growing problem. We're asking for feedback on the development of a plan to compensate teachers for class splits and prep losses due to us not being able to obtain a sub when teachers are out sick or out for any reason, bereavement or whatever. Leadership is working with the LEA, the Littleton Education Association, and the LEAP committee to gather data. LEA started doing this last year when the problem was brought forth that teachers were having to cover classes additionally and also lose their prep due to a lack of subs, and a lot of that is due to COVID, sick kids, sick teachers, and still not a lot of people who want to come back into the schools and work. So the district, along with ESI, is currently seeking candidates for substitute positions. However, the stress of split classes and lost preps is weighing on staff at all levels. So we would like to develop a plan in collaboration with teacher groups and building administration to use the savings from unfilled positions to compensate teachers. It's our plan to bring this forward to the board at the December meeting for approval. And then upon board action, we would like to begin a pilot program in the second semester of FY22. So we were wanted to know this evening how the board felt about that and if that was something that you'd like us to move forward with.
All right, are there any comments or questions?
I have a question. This is Kathy. Can you tell me, I'm sure you've looked at the numbers, what percentage are we talking about in terms of not having enough subs or over just since the course since school started this year?
Mr. President, Member Reyes, we actually have two sets of data. So we run our substitutes through ESI. We did this a few years ago in order to save on some administrative costs for tracking the Obamacare data and how many hours they needed before they needed to start contributing to ASRS. And so ESI does actively recruit substitutes for us. They do give us monthly reports, but their reports break down monthly the total fill rate, which includes bereavement, professional development, things like that. So we were looking at a fill rate from ESI at 34% for the month of October. What we have looked at the district, and we just polled employee and family illness, which caused us the greatest amount of concern because we have less time to accommodate and try to find subs. Those sicknesses often come in the morning, 30 minutes before teachers are coming in if they have a sick child or if they've been quarantined or something like that. So we actually, on those absences, have a 21% fill rate for the year thus far.
Does that answer your question there, Kathy?
As a secondary follow-up, do you know how that compares to other districts?
Member Reyes, I could get the data from ESI. They do work with several of the districts in the same rate. I don't know the percentages. I know it's similar, but I can certainly bring that data back.
I would just request if you would please bring it back to the board as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any others? John?
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess kind of in line with Kathy's question. So if this began today or had been in effect for the last quarter, how many of our teachers would have qualified?
That is actually the primary problem that we're working to solve. And so there are different ways depending on the substitute plan. We've always put that in the hands of each of the staffs for the faculty advisory committee. So we have 6 schools that their plans are similar. We have 1 school that's very different. What I mean by that is most schools split. So if there are 4 teachers in a grade level and 1 calls out, there's no substitute. That class is split between those 3 teachers. 1 school has a rotation of prep loss, so there might be 9 to 12 teachers, depending on how long those preps are. They go in each prep period, and there's another teacher that comes in. We're evaluating what that looks like. The new director of human resources, Mr. Diaz, has been out looking at schools, trying to determine that. So we need to develop a tracking system, and we've been working with Frontline or ASOP. You might know they purchased that substitute call-out program. They have a way to track it. Several of the high schools do it, and they track it by period, but we're not sure that's going to work for us. So we're looking at different mechanisms to pay either by the class, by the prep, by the number of students. We're getting some information from the teachers, and the LEA collected information from their members with comments, and I started looking at that. I got it last week, and it's pretty exhausting to look at all of that. So that would be part of the information we would bring forward in December
So
for that.
tonight, we're just approving you looking into this. We're not actually approving the compensation plan itself.
That's correct, Mr.
Okay. No, I think I don't have any. I have lots of questions about this draft document, but given what you just said, I'm in full support of examining how we fairly compensate our teachers for the additional work that they're conducting. So I'll look forward to the additional research that you do on the different mechanisms, and then I'll probably have a bunch more questions at that time.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Give us some hints so we know what to look for.
Well, as I was just, thank you, Dr. Freeman and Mr. President. As I was just looking at this document with the 10 students over the targeted grade number, I guess some of the thoughts that kind of popped into my head was how long would that have to be sustained within a grade level if you had 3 of the 4 teachers with an additional at that additional level, but 1 teacher, for example, wasn't, just based on how the kids were allocated, right?
Right.
Is that fair? And again, it sounds like this is primarily a
daily fill problem.
A daily fill problem. So, like if it happened, if you like 4 times a quarter, then they all get $750. I guess
that is the compensation we would be bringing forward in
Okay,
December.
so-
I know you're looking at this one.
Frequency and count.
time for, okay. So again, that it makes this is just kind of an initial, like, we're putting some information out here, but you guys are actually going to research those additional factors when developing that plan for board approval.
Yes, member, is the document that's up right now is the one we're going to talk through next, and actually what we're seeking action on this evening. This is the second part of it that's showing on the screen.
Oh, so you haven't even talked about this document yet.
That is correct.
That's why it doesn't make sense to me yet.
That is correct.
And that was a question I was going to ask.
Okay,
you.
well,
Can you walk one and do through for us so that we can see what's going on?
I apologize then for my line of questioning.
No, I
that's
appreciate it.
Mr. President, Member Rader, and the rest of the board. I mean, that's what I don't know if we got the second part first or the first part second, but the draft before you is an equity issue for special ed teachers to be layered into what regular ed teachers already have. The question that Dr. Kelly started to discuss is, because of the sub problem, putting together a pilot program for compensation when subs aren't available to get a little feedback. And your feedback's good, because we want to have all the metrics there for how we might compensate people, and within the existing budget funds we have that would have gone to subs that we're not getting.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to live within our means and try to set up parameters that way. So, any other kinds of concerns about the ideas she presented would be good. And then our idea is a second semester pilot to see how the compensation works and how teachers feel about it. And then essentially we could say, okay, for next fiscal year, here's what we've learned and what we think would be a good approach. So we are using a multi-stage approach once again to try to wrap our arms around a new problem, or actually COVID's been an effect multiplier. This has always been a problem. It's just made it, harder. There's less people who are available to sub, and there's just as much or more illness as there ever was before. So I guess I'll let Dr. Kelly get on then to this document and what the essence of that is. We just have a lot of things going on. I apologize for the confusion and anything that threw
No,
people
the
off.
apology is certainly mine. I probably misheard.
No
so thank you, Dr. Kelly.
So
and
Dr.
Dr.
Kelly,
Freeman.
is there any other school districts that are using a similar program, or is this one that we're kind of looking at kicking around? Could other people swipe it, I mean, not swipe it, borrow it from us or use it?
President Nielsen, we're actually trying to swipe it from someone else,
Okay.
but haven't found it one that necessarily fits into the elementary setting. The high schools typically have the compensation for additional classes taught in a day or loss of prep. It's the elementary districts that are looking into it, so we could be a trailblazer, and but we've certainly been asking around.
This is Amy, and I can tell you the district that I teach in has been doing a similar program where if they split the class that doesn't have a sub, and we split the sub pay from the district. So I know that that is been used in that district. The concern has come up is if the class size is 35 kids divided amongst 3 teachers and all of us are at 35, we're getting up to very large classes. And so sometimes, speaking from personal experience, I don't necessarily really want the extra pay. I'd rather not have the extra kids. And so some grade levels have chosen to not split. Like if you have 7th and 8th grade, for example, and split amongst 7th to 35 amongst the 7 teachers, as opposed to just 3, and then choose not to get the extra pay because it just means less kids in our rooms at the time. And that's just kind of personal annotation.
Yeah, there are trade-offs which we'll bring back. For instance, if 2 teachers in the same grade level are gone, then kids you can't double up the room. The room's not big enough, so you have to go outside the grade level. And it's while you might present it simply as splitting or covering, there are complications in multiple scenarios that need to be thought through and addressed, and that's why we're working with the Teachers Association and the LEAP committee to explore some of those, and I think probably time, frequency, and count parameters in different scenarios might warrant different compensation, and to Ms. Sousnick's point, might also warrant going to Plan D, which we haven't made up yet, but we're
Okay, were you going to walk through this for us? Is that, or do we need to do?
If we're okay with substitutes, or you don't have any other questions, which I really appreciate, then I'll move on to what we're actually asking you to act on this evening.
Thank you.
So I'll give you a little history on the class size overage plan. This was actually board approved in 2015, and the first 3 lines that say grade level K2, 3, 5, 6, 8 are actually already approved by the board. And where we got this information was the targeted class size of 27 K to 5 and then 30 for 6 to 8. At which point, when we had 10 students over for 10 consecutive days, we would post to hire for a teacher, right? In the last few years, we haven't been able to find those teachers, so that's why the board heard and acted on the class size overage plan, so that we had a couple options, working with the grade level, the administration. We would hire a paraprofessional for that grade to assist with different things, or the teachers could say, I'd rather take on a large class size and receive some additional compensation because I have to do X amount anyway. The cost of that was paid out of position savings. So we would have had an additional amount of kids to trigger us to hire another teacher. So that would have been within our budget. What we found is that we're having the same issues with special education now. So we applied the same methodology for resource teachers, and then self-contained teachers which would be the classes that they don't move in and out of, but they have more specific disabilities. So this would allow us to pay teachers additional funds for additional caseloads, kind of like you said before, like at X amount of students that would trigger. Now, of course, we would attempt to hire a teacher first. Some of the reason that we're taking this to the board now is we used to go to contract services and we could get an additional teacher to drive the numbers down. This year, when we contact our contract service providers, they don't have any more teachers. And so we don't have teachers. We're actually fairly fortunate in our district. There are districts that are missing 10 to 20 special education teachers and are simply saying we're providing compensatory education services at a later time. So in applying the same methodology, if you're wondering, I bet Mrs. Reyes would ask, how many teachers would this be affecting? We currently have 3 resource teachers and 1 self-contained teacher that would fall under this and be eligible for additional compensation. Now, we could say that from position savings, we would apply that, but we are able to pay for this out of our IDEA grant, which, as you learned from Mr. French tonight, is part of our entitlement grant program. And so it would actually not affect the M&O budget for us to add this to the existing document that the board had already approved. Questions?
Any questions further from the board members of the board?
This is Kathy. I just have a follow-up. So we do have money that we could apply without affecting the M&O, but what happens, I mean, it's definitely, once you give it, it's expected. Very difficult to take things like that away. What happens next year when we are in the same scenario and we don't have the money in our budget, or our savings?
Mr. President, Member Reyes, we actually have additional funds in IDEA. We would allocate this and change the grant around if we needed to pull specific things, but we also have an opportunity to apply for high needs grants and different things to offset. So there's quite a bit of contingency built in the IDEA grant because special education is so volatile and it's hard for us to determine if we have different kids move in and out depending on their services. So as a backup plan, we would of course have position savings in M&O because we would be triggering a position to hire once we met these overages. So we're just trying to save a little bit of M&O money and paying it out of the IDEA grant.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You'll wait. So the motion that we need tonight then is to approve the class size overage compensation schedule, or the investigation to come back with us and say, this is what we found.
Is the revised schedule to include?
Yes. You're recommending that the approval of the class size overage compensation schedule this evening.
So I can make that motion, Mr. President. I'll move the governing board approve the class size overage compensation schedule.
Thank you.
And this is Kathy, again, just for verification, you're still bringing us back additional data, is that correct? Or did I misunderstand?
Mr. President, Member Rader, yes, we are bringing back additional data. There's an item on the December board meeting.
Where we will have the ability to further discuss this once we see true numbers of what this looks like?
On the substitute pilot program, yes, Mrs. Reyes. The only thing that the board's approving this evening is the overage of the compensation, the addition to the previously approved plan.
Okay, this is Kathy, then I will second that. Thank you for the clarity.
Thank you so much. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Passes. Dr. Freeman, I'm back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This has become a standing item to close our meeting. If Thank you. Pull up the most recent metrics reported to the board in their board update from county and state health department. This compares the Littleton School District in blue to Maricopa County in green. And the area of concern we have, of course, is the increase in the last 2 weeks reported, which is already a couple weeks old. You can see that illnesses are trending up both for the county and for the school district. Percent positivity trending up a little bit for the county and holding steady for the district, except that the county is a little over 10% and we're a little over 20%. So our percent positivity is still twice as high as Maricopa County. If we scroll down a little bit, I have some information on vaccination rates, which still remain fairly low. Those numbers are for fully vaccinated everyone. The other numbers, which I'm just going to skip down a little bit to where it says 53.5 and 61.8, respectively, same zip codes, are if you only count eligible fully vaccinated. And what the difference is in that is that students, high school students, 12 and up, were now counted as eligible, and adults are counted as eligible. But the majority of our students, K-6 and some 7th graders, aren't eligible. So we've looked at the bigger number, everyone. Now that student vaccinations are going to be available, everyone will include our students. And so if we see the same vaccination behavior as eligible, we could conceivably go in a short period of time from 43 to 53, assuming that the families that have chosen for themselves to be vaccinated would also choose for their kids to be vaccinated. That whatever the belief system or the resistance is going to be similar for the little ones as it was for the big ones. We've heard a lot of parents that said they had reservations. And I was just listening to Rebecca Sunshine this morning on the side effects of vaccinations for students that are 5 to 12. And since it's 1/3 of the dose, they're really seeing minimal, or, I mean, if you think about it, the biggest would be 1/3 of the side effects. So you still can have any reaction to any kind of vaccination, but the effects on kids have been very small. And of course, the idea is if there's a lot of virus in the community or in the environment you're in, even with vaccination, you can still get sick. But with vaccination, you don't get as sick. And so it has been really effective in reducing hospitalizations or severe illness. So no one knows really quite for sure what people will choose for their children. We're making some assumptions, though, that opening up vaccines to children 5 and up could really help the vaccination rate of the community. And we do have another clinic opening a week from tomorrow here in the auditorium. The other data that's on there, it's a table and it's a little small, so it's harder to read, but is the last 3 weeks of Littleton COVID activity. We report this whole table to the board so they can see the trends. But what you see is reports for the prior week, the one that just got done November 4th, and then the 28th and the 21st going backwards. So what you see there is cases at 17, 27, and then 16. The week prior, the one right after fall break, where cases were higher at 27, and then staff and students in quarantine going from 20 to 39, now up to 86. So what we're seeing is a spreading impact across kids in the school, and that's a concern that matches the positivity and the illness data. Then what we have is notifications to staff for exposure. That went from 5 to 15 to 29. So we have had a lot more staff impacted. We have some people who are exposed, and positive but aren't showing severe illness. So they are able to continue to work, some working remotely, but continuing to educate kids. And then finally, outbreaks. We had a school in open outbreak status last week and 2 the week before. The 2, I think, are going to continue in outbreak status. They're a week ahead of the one other school. We did send kids in 8th grade at Quinton home, and outbreak status generally lasts about a month. Is that right? And 28 days. And so then everybody knows the quarantine rules is essentially 2 weeks, where outbreak is 4 weeks. So some of those kids will be able to return to in-person after the Veterans Day holiday beginning on the 15th. They should have gone through their illness incubation and spreading period and be able to return to school. We do have some other schools that are starting to show more positivity. Really what we're concerned about is the behavior of students and families when they're away on fall break or Veterans Day recess or the upcoming Thanksgiving week off, is that people have, I think, just grown weary of precaution and masks and those kind of things. And it seems like every time we let our guard down, we have another flare-up of illness, and it does impact the school, even if people don't feel like their illness is severe. Our teachers are really stressed out about having to be in person and remote, and knowing whether they're going to be hybrid or not hybrid, the additional work and the division of attention that creates for them. I would say the same thing is happening in the staff. Is people are a little exhausted of just being resilient and starting to break down a little bit. It's been hard for everybody. It's been hard for families, and it's been hard for staff. We think right now that we need to stay the course with the mitigation plan that we have in place. Here's what we're trying to do. To minimize the disruption to in-person learning, we first quarantine or isolate a student or 2 at a time. We may look at a subgroup of students or a classroom of students. So it's possible that a class is quarantined at one school at one grade and another school at another grade. If the illness expands beyond that and we look at positive cases in multiple rooms in the same grade level, as the example I just gave, we send a whole grade level home to remote learning. But the rest of the school and all the other schools are still staying in person. And so the next level we would have would be a grade band. And so those are primary, intermediate, and middle school. We, in observing the behavior we've seen in the last week or two, think it's possible that because the upper grades, the middle school grades switch classes and maybe more socially active adolescents away from school, that we may close like a middle school band to in-person learning and remote. And then finally, you would have to have a school go remote. And that may happen at multiple schools or multiple grade bands in different places, but the idea of resisting the whole school or the whole school district having to go to remote learning at any time, but just dealing with the incidence of illness and exposure on a case-by-case group basis with the smallest group possible. That's the strategy we're using now. We think even with the dynamic impact of illness and positivity, it probably is the best way to go forward. I do want the board and the community to appreciate the huge stress that puts on our teaching staff, though, of having to be shifting a focus and strategy and sometimes having 2 going at once, that it really has placed a lot of stress and demand on our staff to be able to maintain the flexibility of keeping in-person learning going at the same time we're dealing with all of these other illness and remote factors. So We don't have a proposal or recommendation for any change right now. We have scheduled to have for board action in January a review of the ESSER Safe Return to School Plan, which is every 6 months. And we've reviewed that. We don't see anything that we think we need to change in there right now. So we're recommending stay the course, but with a great deal of compassion and understanding, kind of like if you go out and you see in a store, we're having trouble getting help, so please be nice to the people that came to work today. Our teachers also.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. I don't think it's only the stores. We've been out to a couple of restaurants. It says in the front door there, it says, please be patient with us. And 45 minutes or an hour later, we get the food, but it's pretty good.
And no dishes.
I guess I would just like to, on the part of the board, tell all the staff, teachers, and all those involved, thank you for all that you do, for your flexibility and your ability to be resilient in the situation that we all find ourselves. Thank you so much.
One last thing, Mr. President, members of the board, if I could, there's a lot of talk going around about mandatory vaccinations and testing, OSHA rules, and I did provide in your last update the statement from the Arizona Industrial Commission and the implementation of that. We understand there's going to be litigation and a lot of argument about whether that should be in place or how it should be put in place, and we're carefully monitoring that. Discussions we've had today is, we think testing is way less invasive than, forcing people to have shots in their arms, and how we might respond to that. We probably will bring this up again at the December meeting. And I'm not really sure this will go into effect July 4th, but between now and our next regular meeting, we probably will see a flurry of activity, legal and political, and be able to analyze that a little bit and bring that back for discussion at a future meeting. But right now, we're not pushing the panic button on anything else mandatory when we return from winter break until we see what's going to happen with U.S. and state leaders and other state agencies. So we are in a little bit of a observing pattern right now to track that. I just don't want people to get the idea that we're not being very conscientious and diligent about understanding what may happen and what the implications are. And I think it's just premature to get off on a tangent about that until we see what else unfolds.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. We all appreciate your insight and information that you do provide for us. At least that keeps us on our toes and knowing what's going on. If there's nothing else, you don't want to say anything else tonight? You've had enough? If there's not, let's go ahead and have a motion to adjourn this evening.
This is Kathy. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
This is Amy, and I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are any of you opposed?
No.
Thank you. Have a nice
Thank you, everybody.
evening.
Good night, everyone.